Hey folks, Invincible Season 2 is back, which is something I probably shouldn't have to say. You would hope that they would have just had the whole batch of episodes done before they started releasing them, and I know they said that they did this to generate hype, and I don't entirely buy that, just given the fact that they didn't even have a release date at the beginning there. They had to give us a release date for their release date, which just suggests some things going on behind the scenes beyond just wanting to build hype for the second half of the season. Although I will say, having seen Season 2, Episode 5, it did kind of feel almost like a first episode of a new season, so it's not as though it was a complete disaster that we got it later. I'm not going to be reviewing every single episode as they come out. However, I do want to make some comments on the quality of this one because I'm not someone who can really speak to the animation quality or whatever. There are definitely things where I feel like the cracks are kind of showing. But on a writing front, I felt like Season 2, Episode 5 was very, very strong in two particular ways. One, obviously, spoilers, liked the cliffhanger at the end. I felt like that was a pretty good kind of dramatic situation, and I felt like our characters all made sense in the situations that they were in. But more importantly than that, I felt like this episode really did balance its multiple plot lines surprisingly well. Every single character is involved in like 3 different subplots, and so the fact that all of those kind of interacted with one another and built on each other was really good. There was definitely some efficient writing there where the conversation between Mark and Debbie towards the beginning of the episode actually furthers the whole Cecil plotline later on. I felt myself getting confused for like 3 seconds in there, and then I thought about it for a moment and realized, oh wow, yeah, that was actually pretty well put together, and I appreciated that. It was just kind of a well-written episode in a way that may go a bit underappreciated to folks who are looking for the more specific things that Invincible is known for. That said, on the front of things that Invincible is known for, there were 2 lines that really jumped out to me that I thought were incredibly important and that I wanted to give a little bit of attention here. So I should note, I have been making Invincible videos for a fair little while here. I've created a playlist, so if you're new here, I would definitely recommend checking those out. There will be more coming in the following weeks and months. I absolutely love this show. It's one of my favorite things to talk about, and I don't know, I put a fair bit of effort into them, especially because it's one of the few times where I have the chance to compare 2 different adaptations of something in kind of a vein that not every single person has already covered before. So if you're interested in that, I would definitely check out that playlist, and I will be referencing a couple of those videos here. But on the topic of those 2 lines that I thought were important, the first one comes very, very close to the beginning of the episode where Mark is talking to Kim Wexler, alien, I think her name is Andressa, and she makes a comment about the fact that the Thraxan society, because their lives are so short, do not assign blame.
Thraxan lives are short compared to yours. Our culture doesn't assign blame. We only look forward.
And to me, this line was incredibly important in both vindicating me on some of my previous commentary on the Thraxans. I made a whole video about how I think that they do a really fantastic job of furthering some of the themes in a way that the comics didn't necessarily really draw your attention to, but I think the show did a fantastic job of kind of comparing and contrasting the relationship between Thraxans and humans to the relationship between humans and Viltrumites. Check out that video if you want more. It was honestly one of my favorite, I think, things that I've talked about with respect to this show. But on top of that, the line about Thraxans not assigning blame to me really hammers home just how important it is to respect the humanity of these beings, even though they don't have some of the things that a lot of us tend to assign value to. Sure, they don't live as long as us, but nonetheless, that fact about them is it's important to them. It's a part of who they are, and it doesn't lessen the value of their lives in any way because they still live long, happy lives from their own perspectives. And, you know, maybe it feels very short to us. Maybe 1 year is something that would be very, very difficult for a human to cope with, but it's how they experience the universe. In fact, it's even kind of addressed a little bit later where Andressa comments on the fact that she understands these really long timescales, but to her, they're just a concept. Her life is here and now, and that's what matters to the average Thraxan alien. So I really appreciated that line, really just hammering home how important these beings are and how even though they probably won't factor into the story all that much, they have driven their point home incredibly hard, and it's really nice to see. Again, you know, look back at the previous video for more specifics talking long term about the Thraxans. But yeah, I really appreciate their inclusion into this. And I love the fact that even though they might look like just generic bug aliens on the surface, they actually do a fantastic job of kind of fleshing out the themes of the show. And I also think it's just important that the show has kind of given some consideration to how these beings would actually experience this time difference. I'm sure it's been done before, but yeah, living for such a short period of time, even if it's all you know, would probably have some impact on how you view the world and how you experience things. So it makes sense to me that, okay, these aliens live for a very short period of time, so they've gotten over the idea of expressing blame, of punishing themselves or others for their mistakes, because they don't have that long to wallow. So they're living life in the here and now. And I think that's fantastic, and suggests some genuine love and care has gone into kind of crafting this society. But two, and probably the more important line to the average person, comes a little bit later in a conversation between Debbie and Mark, where they're finally discussing all of the things that happened in the previous episode after Mark left Earth to go deal with the problems on the Thraxan planet. He's finally given her a recap of all of the things that happened to him, and they have this exchange.
Now he's left another planet in ruins, and his new kid is sitting in my kitchen. He's never on the hook for the lives he destroys. Just leaves it for everyone else to clean up. Again and again.
You know, you're right about Dad leaving his problems for other people to fix.
And without beating around the bush, this was incredibly refreshing to hear, because I was genuinely still worried that they might kind of veer into the direction that the comics sort of took, where Nolan's redemption felt incredibly fast. I'm going to have to reread the comics for some more like specific thoughts, so if there's a line that's similar in there that I've forgotten about, I will probably address it when I do my whole full writing comparison after all 4 episodes are out. But at least when I read them, I really felt like his arc was incredibly rushed. It felt like he became a good person, he had one violent outburst, and then he was pretty much just good after that. So that was incredibly appreciated, just seeing that they recognize, okay, just feeling bad about the bad things that you've done is not a full redemption arc. It's the start of a redemption arc. In order for his arc to actually be completed, he has to put in the work that he thus far hasn't even seemed willing to necessarily put in. They seem to understand on a deep level that fucking off to an alien planet and leaving Earth alone is not atoning for the crimes that he committed here. It's great and all that he's not killing people anymore and that he cares about protecting people, but he failed to do that already. He literally killed a shitload of people. So the idea that his kind of apology and recognition of his moral failings is enough to actually atone for what he's done is kind of laughable. And I felt like the comics didn't fully understand that fact, at least on the level that the show is understanding it. So I immensely appreciate that, and it suggests to me that Nolan is going to get some really, really interesting stuff. So I really do just appreciate that they don't seem to be going the route of the comics, where basically by this point it felt like Omni-Man's arc was pretty close to over, and then after this he doesn't really grow all that much as a person throughout the rest of the series. But no, they recognize, yeah, this guy has a long way to go. He's done worse things than he did in the comics, and he has to do a lot of work to actually come back from that, if it's even possible. And I think that it is. Again, I've talked about this extensively. I really love this show. I think that they're doing a really good job so far. I have some critiques on the animation, and some of the writing feels a little bit less efficient than it did in season 1, but overall I'm very, very happy with this season and the direction that they've taken things. I will be putting out more stuff pretty soon here. I'm planning on giving a brief little review, possibly brief, of the mobile game that just came out, because I do think it's kind of an interesting thing to discuss. So that'll be coming out soon. You can absolutely expect a writing comparison between the comics and the show once this whole portion of the show is out, because that's one of my favorite things to talk about. Like I said before, I'm basically repeating myself. This is barely scripted at all. But I hope that you're having a good time with this show. Stick around, check out my other videos on the subject if you haven't already, and I will hopefully see you soon.